Who is your daddy? I am your father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?
All right, I believe we are live with episode 124 of Fathers of the Grind. My name's Tim Nestor. I know we're kind of recording every 2 weeks at the moment. Just bear with us. Thanks for your patience. It's kind of been a really good break for both of us. I think Derek's got a lot of stuff going on. I've got a lot of stuff going on. So it's been good to space it out because when E3 comes, I'm hoping to do a number of episodes over that week. So we'll get to that when we get to that. Derek, how's it going?
It's going good. It's actually going pretty good right now. So
good. You got that fan spinning behind your head. I mean, no one's going to see the video on this, but I can see it. And
yeah, that was to add some effects to our video feed that we don't have.
Yeah, looks great.
And you get this like awkward smile I keep giving you.
No, yeah, keep that going. Creep.
Like I'm an excited girl talking to her.
Creep factor is higher than usual. That's fine. And it's usually pretty high.
I'm really excited.
Yeah,
I have a big crush on you. Yeah, so things are going good. I'm actually kind of gaming, and so we can talk about that tonight.
Well, why don't we jump right into that? Why don't you tell us what has brought you back?
I think life's starting to get a little more normal. I mean, I'm still dealing with crap. Don't get me wrong. And maybe next week, if I talk to y'all, I might fall apart again. But I'm starting to enjoy things again. So I've been gaming. I still can't really get into God of War. I'm not gonna blame the game. I really do think it's just me wanting to play stuff that doesn't require thinking, and that game still requires too much thinking for me. There's just too many like puzzles, and I think part of it is the desire as I play it is to unlock everything or get really good at gear and stuff. And so every time I come up on like a puzzle or something, I want to solve it to unlock some treasure, and so I have to stop and think, and then I'm like, all right, I just don't want to play this. But some of the stuff I've been playing, I'm still consistently jumping into Rocket League. If I turn a system on, I always jump into Rocket League. But I've also been playing Destiny 2. I beat the Warmind DLC or whatever. By beat it, I mean I played the story campaign. I played it with a buddy of mine. We went through all the missions in one night.
How was that? Because I've pretty much written off Destiny 2 at this point, as you know, that's how those kind of games go. How was the DLC? Was it worth jumping back into?
I think it's worth playing just because it's only like 4 missions, so it's not real long, and it's fun. But I think again, the main reason I'm enjoyed it was just because it was mindless fun. I mean, you don't have to think with Destiny 2. I wasn't even really paying attention to the story. I was just hanging out with one of my friends, talking and gaming. I think that's what I've been trying to do more, is just play co-op, like Essie and Rob and my brother. Hey, you guys want to play anything? Just because I think it's good to keep my mind busy with the game, but it's also better to have it where I'm engaging other people. So Destiny 2 is a good game for that. I played a little bit of Far Cry 5 with my buddy Nate Bacon. That was fun. We played for about an hour or so. He's still in the first area on Xbox, and I've beat the game on Xbox. So my character's pretty pimped out, and so it was fun just running around destroying everybody.
Nice.
But I think new. I played a little bit of Ni no Kuni 2 to say that I will probably ignore that game like God of War. But, I mean, I don't know. It's fun, but it's just not something like I would jump into, knowing that it's like a 40 to 60-hour game.
It doesn't meet what you're saying you're interested in right now, and that is co-op games that don't require a lot of thought and puzzle solving. I mean, that's the opposite of those things. So
exactly. So I think off the top of my head, that's really all I'm playing, but it's just nice to game. I'm watching a lot of sports, just watched the Lightning win Game 5, so I'm real excited about that. They're my second favorite hockey team, so I'm hoping the Lightning will go to the Stanley Cup Finals. But that's pretty much it. Just watching sports and then playing co-op and relaxing games.
Speaking of sports, how did the Cavs play today? Let me see.
Yeah, they beat the Celtics, or they are beating them by like 20.
Oh, okay. All right, LeBron's
Okay.
finally showing up. That's good. They're
Are
back in.
you a Cavaliers fan?
No, I'm not really an NBA fan in general, but since they're from Ohio and I'm from Ohio, I typically I like to root for teams like the Cavs. But the thing is, I also like to troll people who think LeBron is better than Jordan because I totally don't think that's true. I think Jordan is the best.
I still think LeBron physically is superior than Jordan
Right.
as a player. That LeBron, or where LeBron lacks the Jordan-esque, is when it comes to like he would show up for one game and score 40, and then the next game he doesn't do anything. So Jordan never did that. Even when Jordan was off shooting, he was still going to give you 25 points, and he was going to impact the game in some way.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I've always thought that Derek looks on the outward appearance and Tim looks at the heart. So that's.
So I actually think LeBron physically, I'm talking like his abilities, like his rebounding, his shooting, his how powerful. I actually think LeBron is the better player. Like he's superior to Jordan in almost every way. But when it comes down to who's probably going to end up with the most rings and who was just the closer and you could count on him always to be consistent in the playoffs, Jordan. It's not even close.
Yeah, Jordan was well, they're both legends. I just think Jordan was better. But it is pretty close. LeBron's no joke.
But you got to remember, my favorite team is the Knicks, and my second favorite team is the Celtics. So I'm not going to be a big Jordan fan.
No, yeah. The Knicks really don't like Jordan. That's
Yeah.
pretty funny.
So,
All right,
going for the Celtics. I like the Celtics a lot.
guys, we'll try to back away from the sports talk. I know a few of you are slowly backing away from whatever you're listening to.
Should we tell them now to fast forward like 3 minutes because I went and talked about sports?
Yeah,
guys.
Hey guys, go ahead and skip the last 3 minutes.
So here's what you want to do. Once you hit this point of the video, you want to rewind for 3 minutes and then hit play and then fast forward 3 minutes back to.
Yeah, just hit that skip ahead 30 seconds button that most players have just like 6 times. Yep.
Yeah, just do that.
There you go. I am just waiting for football season. So when football season starts, don't you worry, guys. You'll hear a lot more from me. By the way, one last thing. I did see that HBO's Hard Knocks series is going to be focusing on the Cleveland Browns this year. So, and I think that has a lot to do with them drafting Baker Mayfield, number 1. So that should be kind of interesting because people yet again have high hopes for the Browns, but I lived there for a long time. Don't get your hopes up for the Browns.
I really don't understand the Browns though. Like, not to talk about sports too much again. I'll just make one comment.
Yeah.
They really don't know how to draft players. And I'm not knocking Baker. I just don't think he's number 1 overall. But they consistently draft players that they really shouldn't draft. And they do it all the time, and they never pan out.
I know.
And I just don't understand it. Sometimes there's just clear guys that they should have taken. Like, I would have taken, no matter what, I would have taken Barkley. I don't care if you need a quarterback. I would have taken Barkley because I just think he's the most freak athlete in the draft. But anyways, that was just
he reminds me of Adrian Peterson. I just think at that point you go with, if they would have taken Bradley Chubb, no one else has taken Baker Mayfield. They could have gotten him at number 4, easy, if they really wanted him. But whatever.
I'm happy with Bradley Chubb. I'll take that. The Broncos.
He is really good. Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
really good.
And we already got a few really, really good defensive players. So
yeah,
he'll fit in pretty well.
Yeah, it's gonna be.
All right, sorry guys, skip again. Another 2 to 3 minutes. This is now Sports Talk Radio with Derek Teague and Tim Nestor.
Well, so now that we're shifting away from sports, I've been playing a whole bunch of different stuff, catching up on the backlog over the last couple of weeks since we haven't talked. So a couple of things that I've been able to finish. Last time we talked, I had gotten a little bit into Bloodborne. I wasn't super far, I don't think, but I did finish Bloodborne. I ended up getting up to level 80 something, I guess.
I feel like you beat that game way too fast. Maybe I was just not in Fathers of Grind a lot, but like every time I would see you post, you're like, yeah, I beat 9 more bosses tonight. I'm like, what Do you not struggle with this game at all?
No, there's definitely it's challenging from start to finish, without a doubt. But I'll tell you what, so this game does a ton of things really, really well. And my gripes with it are mostly nitpicking and because I like to troll Bloodborne
Yeah.
purists. It is really fantastic. One of the things I really like is as you finally struggle your way through an area where you're just terrified around every corner because everything could kill you. After you level up a little bit and get some improvements and you've fortified your weapon a little bit, you come back, you can just sweep through some of these areas and you feel so awesome. Not every game does that well, but this one does. And so when you go back through to farm for either blood vials, if you need to stock up on those, or even just to get some of the blood echoes, it can feel really good to go back through. And of course, some of the areas after certain bosses, the environment changes a bit and they get tougher anyway. So they're worth going back through. So anyway, they do a good job of that. I really enjoyed that game a lot. There were some boss fights that really ticked me off, but most of them were pretty clever, pretty creative. You had to figure out how to beat them in different ways. They weren't necessarily just straightforward, don't get hit and then hit him a lot. Like sometimes there was a little bit of a trick to the fight. And I won't say much more than that because if you haven't played it, and I know some of our listeners haven't, give it a shot and don't give up. Like dying is actually part of the game. It took me a couple deaths to realize, yes, you can lose the blood echoes, which means you kind of feel like you lost progress. But the point is you're actually still progressing even when you die. Number one, you can go back and collect your echoes. If you're careful, you can get back there without dying again. And number two, you're getting better at the game. So I actually improved every time I went back and fought, even if I didn't get a chance to level up. So
that's why I always say when you, not just you because you played it now, but like when I'm talking to people, like I know Jesse White was like, I don't have time for a game that has me like replay an area 50 billion times. I'm like, but that's why you're playing the game. Like you shouldn't be playing it just to like get through a story. Like when I play God of War, I'm playing God of War to enjoy the combat, but I'm playing it to get through the story. I need to feel like I'm moving forward. With Bloodborne, you don't want to move forward unless you feel like you're good enough.
Right.
And even if you feel like you're good enough, sometimes you want to stay there because you want to get more powerful. So it's designed differently. It's not story driven. It's just about accomplishing goals and getting more powerful so you can get better aim. And I didn't mind the redundancy after I adjusted to what the game was instead of playing it like, why can't I just move forward?
You just mentioned two of the things that are my biggest gripes with the game. One is it is repetitive, and you have to be okay with that. And I don't fault anybody now that I've played it, and I know what it's like to not want to play it because you know it's going to be repetitive. That can be a big turnoff. That actually got me to consider moving on from it before I got too far into it. But I stuck with it, and I'm glad I did because it really was fun. The other thing is you mentioned just to get through the story. Listen, I know there's a ton of lore that From Software created with this game. People said there's lots you can read and learn about it, and some of the side stuff, if you really pay attention, there's some deep lore there. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but the game certainly doesn't drive you forward with a strong narrative. It's more the design.
It actually does have good lore, but I think we talked about it in the last podcast. I'm really glad they don't push the story in your face because of the way the game's designed.
So the lore didn't mean anything to me until the very end, when you get to the last couple of fights and the last couple of things that happen that you kind of realize, oh, that's kind of a interesting setup. So I never paid attention to any of it, and I didn't really care. So those are some of the weaker spots. Is yes, it does get repetitive, but I thought it was fun. And then yes, the story elements to it are not super strong, but that's again not necessarily why you play it. So anyway, finished Bloodborne, loved it. I did a couple of the side stuff that I wanted to try that was recommended and looked cool, like Canehurst Castle and a few other ones that were pretty cool. So very fun game, loved it. But now I'm done with it. I'm not going to go back and do the old Hunters. I get it. I get what Bloodborne is. When they make a sequel, I'll definitely try it out. But I'm all set. I'm all set with
the
Bloodborne.
Yeah. Like if you think the main game's hard, holy crap.
Yeah, so I'm not really interested in getting to that because I definitely hit some frustration. Without spoiling it, there are some optional fights at the end based on some decisions that you make. And the second to last one, so I did all the way through the very end, made all the right choices. I found the items you have to find to get the real ending. And that second to last boss drove me crazy. It probably took me a dozen tries, which is by far the most of all the bosses I fought. He was so frustrating. So I understand that frustration. I think that experience made me go, you know what? When I do beat this game, I'm done. Like I enjoyed it, but I'm not playing the old hunters. I've heard from you and many others that it's really tough.
I knew I got really good at the game when I was able to beat the second to last and the last boss back to back and not even die.
Yeah.
Once I was like, I had just gotten in a rhythm, and I was like actually shaking with my controller because I was like so nervous as I was fighting him.
Yep. Yeah, certain types of bosses I think I struggle against. The ones that are faster moving, that almost play that are like fighting hunters basically. I really had a hard time fighting the hunters, but when it was a big giant beast.
That's why the old hunter sucks.
Yeah.
That's all you fight is hunters, and they are terrible.
Even just like the standard hunter enemies that show up in some areas, they're not even bosses. Even those gave me a really hard time in this game. But anyway, Bloodborne is super cool. I like it a lot. And right after that, I jumped right back into another, we'll call this the backlog of shame list here. So I went through Bloodborne finally, and I went back to The Last of Us after ashamedly admitting a few episodes ago that I never finished it. So I went back to The Last of Us, started up. It had auto-saved at some point where I had just started a generator in a basement, and all these things were rushing me, and I had forgotten exactly how combat works, and I died like 3 times in a row. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to have to restart this game because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't remember where I am. I don't remember this, why we're in this basement. So I started from the beginning, that super depressing opening scene, did all that all over again, and went all the way through it. And same complaints I had last time. I don't think that Naughty Dog really necessarily has ever had the best shooting and best melee. But for both Uncharted and The Last of Us, they are just fun. They're just fun to play. Fun to explore. It's cool worlds they've built, great characters, great dialogue. And so, yeah, I think The Last of Us is a pretty phenomenal story. It's everything that Walking Dead type stories wish they could be. It's really, really good. So, and then
that reminds me, I'm playing Uncharted 4 too. I forgot.
Oh, why is that?
Because I started a while ago when I first got the PS4 Pro, and I got like halfway through it and then just quit. I did the same thing with Rise of the Tomb Raider. I got it on PC and got halfway through it and then quit. So I kind of wanted to play something different than like, Destiny and all that stuff, but something I was familiar with. And so I jumped back into Uncharted 4. So I'm going to try to finish my second playthrough on that one. But you just reminded me because I knew there was something else I was playing. And I even posted in Fathers of Grind. I posted maybe I'll finish my second playthrough. So
well, that's not a co-op game. So there you go. That one breaks the mold.
But I have to say, for The Last of Us, I beat that game 5 times, and the right time to enjoy the story 5 times. I think the gameplay is phenomenal. I understand if people are like looking at everything to pick it apart. Yes, your partner in crime does very well. She walks out in the middle of nowhere, so it takes away from some of the realism. But I think the melee combat is fun. I know it's simple, but it's fun because it feels good. And I actually like the gunplay. I think the gunplay is real good. It feels, I don't know, for like the type of game it is, it feels kind of realistic. I can only imagine if I had, zombie type things running at me, how I'd be able to shoot. And I just felt like, I don't know, I feel like they really did a good job of it. And one of the things I liked about The Last of Us over like Uncharted is I like the fact that you could upgrade and have that kind of an RPG system built into it, which is something I always wanted in Uncharted, although I get why they don't do it. But I actually really enjoy the gameplay. That's one of the reasons why I love The Last of Us so much. I think I put it at number 6 on my top 25. I think that was the last game I told you guys about. So I feel like you should like it more.
I do like it a lot. I do like it. It's, again, not too different from Bloodborne in that once you stop expecting something that it's not. I'm totally guilty of this a lot, where I'll play something that is, I don't know, more like Borderlands, and then you go and play something more like Call of Duty, and you're upset that it doesn't have the same RPG elements. So I'm totally guilty of this a lot. So once I understood what Bloodborne was about, what the real heartbeat of that game is, I really enjoyed it. And once I really allowed The Last of Us to be exactly what it is, and I didn't expect it to, have the intricacies of melee combat like God of War or Bloodborne, then I really enjoyed it. The stealth is not that different from something that I love like Hitman. So I really have to back off my criticism of the stealth because it's not that different from that. A lot of the systems that they use are actually kind of similar. So I ended up enjoying it quite a bit. And I actually think I might enjoy the gameplay a tad more than Uncharted. I'm not sure. I have to think about that.
I definitely like The Last of Us. It's just more my style. I like the combat way more than Uncharted. I like the feel of the guns too, the weight of them.
Yeah.
But I like the survival.
Well, and you have to get good guns too. So when you start off with your little pea shooter, it's awful. But then as you upgrade to better pistols and shotguns and the rifle and even the bow and arrow feels pretty good. And when you start to upgrade stuff and you start to be able to attach the scissors or whatever, the blades onto your weapons for one-hit kills, it's really fun. So got to the end of that and I jumped right into Left Behind because I checked on howtobeat.com or howlongtobeat.com, and Left Behind is only about 2 to 3 hours long on average.
Yeah.
So I just jumped in there and played that one, it's a story that fills a time period gap.
It was dumb.
It fills a time period gap from the main game, and it gives you a little bit of a history for Ellie and someone that she references in the main game as well. Overall, I thought it was okay.
It's dumb.
But people oversold it quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, it was all, I'm not going to go into it, but y'all know how I am. It is all PC BS, and that's why people were like, it's so good. No, it wasn't. Shut up.
Would they have said that if her friend had been a boy instead? I don't know. Probably not.
No, they would have been like, oh, well, I really wanted Ellie to be gay.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's not bad. It's, of course, well acted. There's some really cool stuff in there, but overall, it's kind of like just a lesser version of the main game, which is why I didn't love it. When a DLC is done really well, it's because they've given you more of the best that game has to offer, and I just didn't think that Left Behind did that. So
no,
it's okay, but it's not amazing. Also been playing. I just now jumped back in. I'm in World 2 into Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. I put that aside while I played through The Last of Us, and talk about a game that takes no thought. That's all just completely reactive platforming, but really cool. The music in that game is surprisingly good. I was playing with my headphones in, and the music's really good in that game. So love Donkey Kong Country. It's good fun. It's a nice filler in between stuff. And today I was looking through my backlog list thinking, what else do I play before we get State of Decay 2? And I fired up XCOM 2, something I bought on sale. And I wasn't necessarily feeling the strategy itch, but I also had a feeling that nothing else that's going to be super action RPG combat heavy was going to do it for me, because I've just gotten off a string of playing some of the best games in a row. God of War, Bloodborne, The Last of Us, and then I'm going to jump into something that's good but not great, like Sleeping Dogs. No, that's on my backlog and I want to play it, but I didn't want to do that right now. I didn't want to play something that would seem lesser comparatively. So I jumped into a completely different genre, XCOM 2. I'm 3 missions in, plays a lot like XCOM 1. It just looks better. There's a few different options. It's a little more not seamless. It's just a little smoother on console in terms of controls. But so far, the PS4 version, I don't know if maybe my PS4 is old. Maybe I need to get a Pro. I don't know. But it is chugging at times. It really has either frame rate or loading issues or both. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't look like a taxing game. It looks kind of like a last gen game.
Yeah,
still
it's
plays
good
really
looking.
well.
I booted it up too, and it's
it doesn't look that great, and that's okay. But it looks like something that could totally run on Switch at a glance. Like, it doesn't look that amazing, but boy, it does not run very well. So anyway, I'll keep playing it though, because it is fun. Right away, I'll give you tons of customization stuff and stuff you can upgrade. You can promote soldiers, but they die permanently if you're not careful. And all the stuff I loved about XCOM 1 is still there. So I'll play that for a little bit. And then, I don't know, I'm kind of open to suggestions. There's some stuff coming out like State of Decay 2 and possibly Detroit, but I'm open to suggestions on the backlog because I'm definitely in a gaming groove these days. I'm ready to keep playing stuff. So
I
get more
might buy Detroit, but I'm definitely playing State of Decay 2. I think it fits exactly what I want right now, which is co-op, and I'm excited that some of my friends are actually getting it, so they might actually be in the mood to play it since it's a brand new experience. So, I'm excited about that game. I think people are this hate wagon because it's an Xbox exclusive. But if anybody would just do 2 seconds of research, they would realize the original State of Decay game was a $20 digital only game that was not a AAA experience at all. And yet they really nailed, and it wasn't perfect. It played a little rough, but they really nailed an amazing experience. But one that I walked away from going, man, this game would be great if it was co-op. And so that's what they did.
Yeah.
It's again, the second one is not a AAA experience. It's not $60 for those who have not done the research. It's not a $60 game. It's a $30 game. You can buy a physical copy, but it's essentially the same as buying a little digital game.
Yep.
And it's $30 and going to be more of the same, but it's co-op, and that's what I want. So I'm really excited for it. You can get it for $24 at Best Buy, which, by the way, sad news for those who don't know, Gamers Club Unlocked is no more. I'm so bummed about that.
Yeah, that sucks.
It sucks so bad. So I might just strictly go. I've been pretty much doing this, but I think going forward, I'm gonna just. But yeah, so I think it fits exactly what I'm looking for right
Did
now.
you say
in
going
gaming.
forward you'll do digital? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'll probably just do digital. I mean, I already
I'll
predominantly
just do digital too, even more than before. But also, I might do some Amazon. I know Amazon does similar deals to what Gamers Club Unlocked did.
Do you think they'll keep it though? Do you think
I don't know.
they'll do it?
I don't know.
That's what I'm wondering, if they'll be like, well, we have no competition.
Yeah, that's true.
We can just get rid of this 20% off now. I don't know.
Yeah, I have, by the way, been able to resell some games, which has been handy, on Facebook Marketplace. So I've made some money back to be able to buy a few things. So that's been nice. The resale factor is real, and if it's something like Far Cry 5 or ARMS for the Switch, stuff that if I want to play it again, I can buy it on the cheap somewhere else. I went ahead and got my money for games like that. That is nice to be able to.
That's what I used to do. I used to buy games for $48 and then play them for however much I was going to play them. Usually sell them and get at least half back, and then I would buy them back when they were under what I sold them for. So I would normally, my net would end up being that I'd pay $40 for every new game. So I got to play it on day one, but I also wanted to own it at some point, and so I would just buy it back cheaper.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's but that's all changing. I mean, everything about what we do is changing. Even the way I consume stuff is changing. Like, I don't want to get up and swap out a disc. Yep. I much prefer digital versions of stuff.
Well, and I like digital too because, I mean, this is when I was super excited to play video games. I'm not there anymore, but I liked being able to play it at midnight. So, like, for instance, God of War, I was excited to play that, so I made sure I had a digital copy so I could play it. But
well, Tim is thankful because Tim got to play it at midnight.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm glad I got to buy Tim the game that he really loved and I could care less about.
Oh, I love it so much. All right, a couple of news items. There's a whole bunch that have happened in the last 2 weeks. As you get closer to E3, so much stuff starts getting talked about. A few highlights that I just grabbed real quick. Rage 2 was confirmed. It was pretty heavily leaked that Rage 2 is happening, so they went ahead and announced it. Bethesda is making this game. It looks like, Mad Max, Borderlands, all that stuff mixed together yet again. It looks like it's got more personality.
I love Rage.
It looks like it has more personality this time, potentially, and it looks interesting. So Rage 2 looks fun. I think it comes out.
Did you play Rage?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so a lot of people complain about that game, but it's actually a lot of fun. Like, it's really good. It had in it like Mad Max, and it had, keep in mind, this was like Xbox 360 game. It had some of the best first-person shooting mechanics I'd ever played.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the story was bad. Like, there was no real good story. That was a letdown, and that's why a lot of people are like, I hate Rage. But the actual gameplay was a blast. Like, the car combat, the the actual first person shooting, all that. I loved it. I beat that game twice. I think it's a phenomenal game. So
this is a
I'm
sequel. You're
really,
excited. Okay.
but this was I think Rage was 60 frames per second on the Xbox 360, which back then that was like I didn't even know what 60 frames per
See, I
second
thought
was. So
Rage
when I play,
was a PS3 exclusive for some reason. I don't know
no.
why I thought that. Okay.
And I'm pretty sure, and I could be wrong, somebody can look it up. I'm pretty sure Rage was 60 frames per second, and I think that's
Dang.
why I didn't realize how good it was because I'm like, dude, these mechanics are so good, and it was probably because I'd never really experienced many 60 frames per second games.
And most people put it in that kind of 6 to 8 mediocre range, or mediocre to good type range.
I would give it like objectively, I would have to give it lower just because the story was trash, like an 8. But subjectively, just for how much fun I had with gameplay and stuff, I would give it like a 9+.
I mean, that's right where stuff like Shadow of Mordor and Mad Max live for me. Really fun, not amazing, but really fun overall to play.
Yeah.
So
okay. Rage 2, I'm
Rage
excited.
2. I think it comes out. Was it August? It's coming out this year.
Cool.
Maybe it's not as soon as August, but I'm pretty sure it's coming out this year.
It'd be awesome if it was August. That would be like the perfect time frame for a game like that.
Well, speaking of August, we also got an announcement that Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate is coming to Switch in August. It's a bummer this isn't Monster Hunter World, because then I would totally play it. But I don't believe that the Switch could handle that anyway. So I'm not that worried about, or I'm not that surprised, I should say, that there's a Monster Hunter coming, but it's not the one that everyone's been playing and loving this year. But still, there you go. You can do some monster hunting on the Switch in English now, because I know you could get it in Japanese before, but now it's coming to North America. Of course, State of Decay 2 comes out this week. The reason why I think a lot of people are putting it under the microscope so heavily is because it is, yet again, I'll say this, one of Microsoft's few, at least known, exclusives for the Xbox, and of course on PC as well. But I think that's why people are heavily scrutinizing it. Not because of the price, but because there's just so few Xbox-only games these days. So it sounds like it's a lot of fun. I think it's getting somewhere in the 7 range on average for scores, which is fine. That's totally fine for a game you're going to pay $30 for, and you're really just going there to kill zombies with friends and build up your fort and all that stuff. So yeah. I'm totally down with State of Decay 2. I think this sounds like a lot of fun. And then, of course, there's a bunch of Kingdom Hearts 3 stuff revealed this week. I haven't kept up with all of it. So if there's a release date, I apologize. I don't have that in front of me. But I know a lot was revealed this week. It does look really charming and pretty, and I'm sure people are going to love it. And one thing I did hear is that with all that they showed, it does seem possible that this actually will drop this year. So we might hear something at E3. But who knows? Who knows with Square what they're going to do. So that would actually win a lot of people back over as news keeps coming out about Final Fantasy VII's remake being just way far away from release. So people would like that.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of other stuff, I'm sure. And again, as we get closer to E3, we'll talk about all the news that's come out. But just a few items that jumped out to me. Wanted to share those with you guys. And for this week, what we're going to do for our main topic is we're going to finish our top 25 countdown. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna go through my list, 25 down to 6, real quick. Derek will do the same, and then we'll name our top 5 games of all time. And it's so funny because if we were to do this in the fall, we might have totally different lists. It just depends on what mood you're in when you're making these kinds of lists. But anyway, this is our list for the springtime of 2018, I guess. So all right, so here's a recap of my top 25. Oh, oops, I forgot to. There it is. I forgot to pull it up. Alrighty. Number 25 was Telltale's The Walking Dead Season 1. 24 is Advance Wars. 23 is Assassin's Creed Origins. 22 is Grand Theft Auto 5. 21 is ActRaiser. 20 is Final Fantasy 9. 19 is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. 18 is Fire Emblem Awakening. 17 is Street Fighter 2 Turbo. 16 is Hitman 2 Silent Assassin. 15 is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. 14 is Super Mario World for the SNES. 13 is Red Dead Redemption. 12 is NCAA Football, 14 being the most recent one. 11 is God of War from this year. 10 is The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. 9 is Shadow of the Colossus. 8 is Super Mario RPG. 7 is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. And number 6 is Rocket League. So that is my top 25 up through number 6 so far. We'll get to my number 5 shortly. Derek, what about you? Take us from 25 up to 6.
All right, I'll make it quick. 25 is Death Row, 24 Twisted Metal, 23 Borderlands 2, 22 Borderlands, 21 Mortal Kombat 9, 20 Mortal Kombat 2, 19 Dragon Age Origins, 18 Jade Empire, 17 Dragon Age Inquisition, 16 Mass Effect 2, 15 Horizon Zero Dawn, 14 Mass Effect, 13 Mass Effect 3, 12 Mass Effect Andromeda, 11 Final Fantasy 15, 10 BioShock, 9 Rocket League, 8 Zelda Breath of the Wild, 7 Dark Souls 3, and 6 The Last of Us.
Nice. You know, now that I've played Bloodborne and The Last of Us, I can confirm Bloodborne wouldn't make my top 25 all time, although I do really like it. The Last of Us might upon some reflection. So at some point, that one might sneak into my list there. It is really, really excellent. But here we go to our top 5, the ones that matter. Let's start with number 5. I'll give you mine first. It is Super Mario 64 for the Nintendo 64. It's my 5th favorite game of all time. Played this game. It's one of the, you and I talk a lot about repeating games, and you are more likely, I think, to replay a game that you like than I am. Even if I like it, I tend to move on.
Yeah.
Well, back in the day, I replayed stuff a lot. So Mario 64, I played through so many times, and I would get all 120 stars, find the secret stuff with Yoshi on the top of the castle and every little secret. Anyone who was playing that game, I could always help them figure it out. I loved Super Mario 64. And I'll tell you one quick memory I have of it is when we fired up the N64, of course, with Mario being a launch title. And the controller was so weird. It looked like this upside down trident that had like this weird joystick right in the middle of it. It didn't make any sense compared to controllers we were used to. And we had never seen an analog stick like that before. And I remember as Mario comes up out of the green pipe and he lands right there in the grass, or kind of like the sand and grass right in front of the castle. And I started moving him around. I realized that the farther you push it, the faster he runs. So you don't have to hold a button to run. That was weird. I noticed that you could walk forward away from the camera or to the right or left, and the camera would turn to follow you. And then you just start pulling the analog stick towards you, and then going in a circle. You're moving in a full 3D space. I remember that so vividly because you could never do that before in any other game. Not really, not truly 3D. So that blew my mind, and I loved that game. I really, really did. So Super Mario 64, even if I objectively wouldn't put it this high, for my personal top 25 list, it's got to be in my top 5. Love that game.
All right. Mine's going to go to a game that I probably would have said was number 1 probably just last year, and that's BioShock Infinite. So it slid down quite a bit. I still love the game. I've beat it like 5 times. When it first launched, I beat it like 3 times in the first couple weeks that it came out, and that was mainly just because I wanted to understand the story fully. So I just kept playing through it and trying to pick up new things every time I would play through it. So while it was a blast to play, I really did enjoy playing it. Yeah. The main hook was just Ken Levine being Ken Levine, and him writing a story that just blew my mind.
Such a crazy ending to that story.
Yeah. So definitely love that game. And like I said, if you would have asked me a year ago, I probably said BioShock Infinite was my number 1 game, and that Last of Us was my number 2. But things have changed.
All right. So let's go number 5. My number 4 is The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt, made my top 5. Actually, it's up to number 4. It was a pretty close call between Mario 64 and Witcher 3, but we've talked in the past about how 2015 is one of our favorite years of gaming. We tried to do like an objective ranking as best we could. I stand by that. I do think 2015 is one of the best years of gaming. And for me personally, there's a few reasons for that. One of them was at number 6. That's Rocket League. And another one is at number 4, and that's The Witcher 3. I have great memories of playing this game. It was so captivating, felt so magical. The world they created and the visuals looked great. Geralt as a character by himself could come across as pretty dull, but Geralt as a character in the world he's in is fascinating.
Yeah.
And so I really love this game. It's one of those things where when you love enough about a game, you can overlook its flaws. And I can overlook some of the issues with movement, or any open world will have this, where you're in some kind of vehicle or riding a horse, and you get caught on the edges of items, that you shouldn't get caught on.
Mm-hmm.
You let that kind of stuff slide when you love enough about a game. So I really love it. I also really like the combat a lot. I love the variety that you can approach every fight with, the research you have to do to take down certain monsters, because you'll never be able to defeat them without understanding what their weaknesses are. And you really truly feel like a Witcher at times for some of those hunts. So
I just want to say real quick,
yeah,
one of the biggest things that I see in our group that I think is a crock of shit, I'm sorry if you have to bleep that out, is that people pick on The Witcher 3 for its combat, and they always bring up Bloodborne and Dark Souls. And the reason why I think this is so stupid is because Bloodborne and Dark Souls aren't even close to being anything like The Witcher 3 at all. So if you're gonna like nitpick The Witcher and say, well, it doesn't live up to, as far as gameplay wise, it doesn't live up to games like Bloodborne and Dark Souls. Well, those games don't live up to The Witcher and anything else. And so that's my issue, is that people are saying that The Witcher should move and play like Bloodborne when it was never designed to be like that game at all.
Right.
Just like Bloodborne and Dark Souls were never designed to be like The Witcher at all.
Right.
The Witcher's combat on its own, now I can say objectively the movement is still off, and I'm not talking about combat, because I still think the movement in combat is actually fine. It's Geralt's movement when you're like trying to go through a door, or you're trying to make a quick turn on the horse or something like that. They're awkward and it's off. I have no problem saying that. But combat wise for The Witcher, it plays completely different, and it actually nails everything, especially if you learn how to dodge or roll or do whatever you want to do and to defend, block, or whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
It moves fine. It has a lock-on system that works fine. Again, it's not as smooth as Bloodborne, but like I said, those games were not designed even close to being like each other. But I always see in the group, and it's not just a few people, I see a lot of people say it. They'll be like, Witcher 3 was kind of a letdown because the gameplay isn't as good as, like, say a game like Bloodborne. Well, that's most games. Like, The Last of Us sucks because it doesn't play as good as Bloodborne. Like, that's just dumb to me, but that's just me ranting. I just think it's stupid. I think The Witcher 3 plays outstanding, and obviously it is in my top 4, so you will hear me talk about it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I actually think the combat is quite amazing, and the reason why I still love it, even after playing the purity that is Bloodborne, which, by the way, I said earlier, I really, really loved Bloodborne. It's really fun. But The Witcher 3, it does its own combat so well. Yes, you can do all the melee stuff with the blocking and the parrying and the dodging and rolling, all kind of Souls-esque.
Yes.
But it is not really meant for you only to play it that way. You've got all these different signs, i.e., in other words, magic that you can use, that you're supposed to use. These potions, these bombs, the way you're supposed to put oil on your weapon before you fight. All these different things you're supposed to be doing to be successful in The Witcher doesn't really have a place in Bloodborne. Yes, there's things you can do in Bloodborne to boost your stats or add fire to your blade. Awesome. But it really comes down to your reflexes, your ability to move around the space and to hit when the enemy has finished their attack animation. And I got to be honest, and I'm being as completely unbiased as I can, there were plenty of times in Bloodborne that even when I hit the button that I know that I hit and in the right way that I knew I was wanted the person to move or whatever, the camera wasn't quite right, or the movement got kind of wonky, or the targeting wasn't perfect. So every game has its flaws, but you don't hear me going on about how Bloodborne's combat is broken because it didn't do everything perfectly all the time. Sometimes it's user error. Sometimes it's just there's no way to make it absolutely perfect. So,
well, I mean, even the first boss you fight in Bloodborne,
I hated that boss. Yeah,
you get lost in him all the time because of the camera, and the reason why is the bridge.
Yeah.
While it's semi-wide, it's not extremely wide.
Yeah.
So when he's like freaking out and you're underneath him, the camera freaks out.
Yeah. No, I actually really hated. I hated that boss. Looking back on it, my least favorite. boss, and it really had to do with the camera. So
Yeah.
fighting on the bridge was a disaster. But
Gotcha.
but anyway, the other thing that I love about Witcher 3 is that it's got such long legs to it. I mean, there's so much side stuff to do. Then the two main DLC packs were both absolutely wonderful, especially Blood and Wine was so good. So there's a ton to that game. That is one game that I have actually considered going back and doing New Game Plus on. And you know me, I'm not a big fan of going back and replaying stuff because I want to keep.
You really should. I guarantee you it would climb higher than 4 if you go back and play it.
It definitely might. Now my top 3 have all vied for number 1 at different times, so that'd be tough, but it's very possible because I love The Witcher 3. So that's my number 4 pick. I'll let you go.
All right, mine's Knights of the Old Republic 2.
I thought this would land at number 1. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm just I actually like Knights of the Old Republic more, so yeah, that's ahead of it.
Oh, spoiler.
But Knights of the Old Republic 2 is actually an outstanding game. It's made by, I think, Obsidian, compared to BioWare with Knights of the Old Republic. And I don't know. The story I always tell with the Knights of the Old Republic game, so I'll go ahead and do my 4 and 3 because that's what they are. So 4 is Knights of the Old Republic 2. 3 is Knights of the Old Republic, so I'll just talk about them both together. But the story I always tell with Knights of the Old Republic is it was the game that really got me to understand what RPGs were, because this is back when you like read video game magazines, and I remember reading about Knights of the Old Republic, and I think I even talked about it with my brother, who he was a gamer, but he wasn't into like console gaming like I was. And so I remember talking to him about Knights of the Old Republic and being like, this game sounds so cool. It's like open area, and you can hit anybody you want to hit. You can do whatever you want to do. And I didn't know much about the game except for like these little details that I thought sounded cool. And when I actually played the game, I was quite disappointed because you couldn't just go and punch a random stranger. And then the combat was like weird. I was like hitting a button and then it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do right then and there because it wasn't real time. And so I was kind of put off by this game. But as I kept playing it, it opened my eyes up to what BioWare does with their RPGs. And that's when I became a huge BioWare fan. So I absolutely fell in love with both Knights of the Old Republic and Knights of the Old Republic 2. Both are quality games. They're games that I absolutely love. And I want to give a shout out again to Microsoft, because I absolutely love that I can turn my Xbox One X on and I have both those games on my console, and they're both in 4K, and Jade Empire. Like, I just love the fact that I have that now, and I can play it with a controller, because I had it on PC, but you had to use a keyboard and mouse, so I never played them. But now I can play it with a controller, and I'm just really grateful. So those 2 games, 2 are my favorite of all time.
Even though you won't, because you're not interested in games, it's still cool that you could if you wanted to.
Yeah, it's just all about that I can. I have options.
It's the freedom. That's what I enjoy.
Yes.
It's just the freedom.
Yep.
All right, for me, number 3. This is where it gets really dicey, but this was a tough one because these top 3 all could be number 1 for me. So for me personally, these 3 are kind of interchangeable, but I had to rank them, so here we go. Number 3 is Final Fantasy VI. It's my favorite of the Final Fantasy games. I think it is near JRPG perfection in terms of the old school RPGs. I do think newer RPGs have introduced a whole lot of new stuff that I like even more. More customization. Of course, I love the new graphics and all that kind of stuff. But for an old school turn-based JRPG, I don't think many games do it better. I think it's, and of course, on a personal level, I loved the ensemble cast. So it's got this really large ensemble cast that each have their own side story. They each have their own origin that you learn, and then they have their own side quests. And so as the game, slight spoilers if you've never played the game before, but as the game kind of builds to what seems to be the final battle, you realize you're just at about the 50 to 60% mark of the game, because this huge world-changing event happens, and now you have, it's not as big of a difference as when in Link to the Past it goes to the Dark World version, but it is similar because a huge world event happens. There's a big split. There's a bunch of damage done to the world, and the oceans kind of shift a little bit. And then you have to recollect your group. and they've all gone their separate ways. There's even one character who, if you don't wait for him during that moment, he's gone. He's gone for the rest of the game because he dies. So if you wait for him, he'll survive. If you don't, and this is all back in Super Nintendo days when they weren't doing a lot of this stuff. And what's crazy to me in a game that's got, I want to say there's, I'm trying to remember the character count. I want to say there's 20 something characters to choose from, I think, and you take them in party of 4 at a time. In a game with that many characters, that they can get you to care about that many of them. There's so many that have really good stories. But they also each have their own fighting styles. So while you can teach them whatever magic moves you want, they also each have their own special. It's essentially their class. And they did a really good job with that. And the story and the music is fantastic. And what's fascinating to me is this game is probably a good 40 to 45 hours minimum if you don't do the side stuff. It's a long game. This game was developed in a year. 1 year.
Wow.
And a lot of the assets were reused from Final Fantasy 4 and 5. I totally get that. When you're reusing a lot of pixel assets and stuff like that, you're just upgrading and tweaking and improving. Then you can focus all your time on story, characters, and everything. But I cannot believe that Final Fantasy 6 was made in 1 year, and Final Fantasy 15 took what, 10, 8, whatever that was.
Yeah.
And now Final Fantasy 7, a remake. They don't even have to retell the story. It's all right there. Maybe do some localization, but it's all about just making the game play in a modern way. That is taking forever. So it's just very interesting to me. I know there's a lot more to it than that. It's just very interesting that one of my favorite games of all time took a year for them to make. And we just don't see that as much anymore.
Nope.
So anyway, there you go. Final Fantasy 6, my number 3. What's yours?
All right, so I already did my number 3, so I'm going number 2, and that's Bloodborne. We don't really need to talk about it that much. I'll just say that I think in 2015 we did our top 10. I think we talked about our top 10. Right?
Wait a second. You did your number 3?
Yeah, I did Knights of the Old Republic.
Oh, the first one. You did both back to back. Got it.
Yeah, 4 and 3.
Okay.
So number 2 is Bloodborne, and I think I did a top 10 for 2015 on our show. And I remember Bloodborne was not, I think it was high, but it was not like my number 1 or 2 game. But over the years, as I kept coming back to it, I've beat the game 3 times now, and I platinum it. It's become one of my favorite games of all time, obviously, at number 2. There's just so many good memories. The group still talks about Bloodborne quite often, and it always gets me in the mood to go back and play it. And it is one of those games where I can just turn it on, go in and play it for an hour or so and just enjoy it. I don't feel like I have to beat it again, but I just love everything about it. I love the world. I love the gameplay. I love the challenge. I love the memories of it being really the first experience with any type of Souls type game. Like I had played the Souls type games before, but I never stuck with them. I kind of did what a lot of people do with Bloodborne, and that's they start it, get beat a few times, and they're like, this is stupid and redundant. But this game in particular, I stuck with, and I was actually shocked I did. And I don't know, I just fell in love with it. And then that obviously led to my love for Dark Souls 3, which ended up being in my top 10 as well for this. So huge fan of the franchise.
But Bloodborne is your favorite of that series. Unless
easily. The gameplay.
Dark Souls 1 or 2 hiding at number 1, which I don't think you do.
No, I don't.
Okay. Nice.
It's a great game.
I can at least attest to the fact that it is really great. So I can't argue with that pick. There you go. It's a good one. All right. So for me, number 2 is Suikoden 2. I've talked about this before, and I know you like to make fun of me for it because it's got this weird Japanese name to it.
I already know you're number 1, by the way.
Yeah, I know you do. So Suikoden 2, of course, at times I think of it as my favorite game of all time. It just, again, depends. But really trying to break it down, it landed at the number 2 spot. It is a series that I think has had 5 main entries, and it's had a couple of spin-off entries in this franchise. Of course, Konami owns it, so it's essentially dead at this point because Konami, what do they do anymore?
They don't care about you.
Yeah, I know. The first game was good. It's a solid JRPG. Suikoden 3 on PS2 is, again, really solid. I like it. It's got pretty dated-looking polygonal graphics now, sadly. Suikoden 2 has that graphic style that still looks great, especially on a handheld. If you're going to play this game, I highly suggest you play it on a Vita because you can get the PS Classic version of it. You can play it on a small screen. You can play it on the go, which is great. It has one of the best stories. It's very emotional. It's kind of set back in like feudal Japan, sort of, although it's in a completely made up version of it. All the towns and everything is totally fake. Lots of magic involved. Most of it is a 6-party battle system where you have a front row and a back row, and some enemies are ranged attackers you put in the back row. They take less damage, but they'll do less damage if they have a sword. So that's why you want to put your ranged attackers back there. Your front attackers, of course, is where you want your higher defense people, your sword attackers, those who might attack quickly. Everyone's got different speeds. You equip runes that gives them certain powerful moves, and different elements work together. So if a earth rune and a fire rune attack with their ultimate attack at the same time, they might do some combo move that's super powerful that attacks all the enemies at once. And there's just so much going on with it, and with the battles, it's super fun. You can even just hit auto attack if you run into it's random battles. So if you run into random enemies and you don't want to have to keep hitting the X button to keep selecting things real fast, just hit auto attack and every character will automatically attack the closest enemy, and it'll just play out real fast right in front of you. So the battles are very quick. Getting new characters that are super low level up to your level is very fast. It's fun to power level characters and see what skills they learn over time. It is so good. And by the way, there's 108 characters to recruit, and you can use roughly 80 something of them in battle as part of your party of 6. It's pretty amazing. And they do have a few other little mini games, cooking mini games, and kind of a larger scale strategy battle type gameplay that they have as well. But most of it is turn-based, very fast-paced turn-based battles. And it's got a very emotional story with a what looks like the main villain is just this really dumb kind of classic anime style villain. When he's out of the picture pretty early in the game, you realize he's not the main villain is a much more emotional situation than you realize. So it's very interesting, very good. Love Suikoden 2. All right. Let's hear your number one game of all time before you fall asleep.
Surprised, since I already said it was in my top 5 and I just haven't said it again, and that would be The Witcher 3. This game, I don't even think it wasn't my number one when we did the show. I think I put Rocket League ahead of it. I may have dropped The Witcher back.
I think you had it like at 3 or something.
Yeah, I think I had Bloodborne and all them in front of it. I think it was like a 4 or 5.
But I mean, that's how these lists go, That's how it happens.
Yeah, and this is another game that's just stayed alive. It did it with the DLC. I went back because I beat the game in 2015, but I'm pretty sure I did not play the DLC until 2016 sometime, maybe even 2017, but I think it was 16. And I played both the DLC, and then I went back and played The Witcher 3 New Game Plus in late 2017 and actually finished it January 1st, 2018. So after playing it a second time, playing all the DLC, this game has climbed my charts all the way to number 1. We already talked about the gameplay. I think it's fun. I think the world is absolutely amazing. I would say the overall story of the game is good. I wouldn't say it's amazing. I think what I like about it is just like the characters and just the world. I could live in that world. Like, I just love the world. And I just enjoyed, for me, the second gameplay, what I really enjoyed doing was like going and getting the best gear, doing a bunch of side quests, and then towards the end, when I was like, okay, I'm done, I just want to beat the game, then I was able just to focus and fly through the game. But I don't know, it's an absolutely amazing game. I just really appreciate CD. I hope we get another Witcher game. I think we will.
I think we will too.
But I'm also excited for what they're going to do with the Cyberpunk game. But I just think the game is one of the best ever created. And like I said, it wasn't something I would have told you in 2015, but as I keep playing it, I even still boot it up. Like, I just booted it up on the PS4 not too long ago, just to mess around with it. So It's definitely one I'll probably come back for a third gameplay. I could definitely see that, whether I do it on PC or just do another New Game Plus on PS4. But it's an amazing game. Yep. It's worthy.
Yep, absolutely love it. It is highest ranked of the modern games that I've played.
Yeah.
So it's definitely up there. And
You
the
need
thing
to let
is,
you need to let your nostalgia die. 'Cause I already know
nostalgia
what your
has
number one.
overwhelmed some of these, because my top three, of course, are all, Super Nintendo and PS1 era JRPGs that I've played through so many times. So Final Fantasy VI, I have to have beaten a dozen times and played it a
Yeah.
number of other times outside of that. Suikoden 2, probably 5 or 6 times, because it's a freaking huge game, but I've played it several times. And then my number one game, which you already know, is Chrono Trigger. I've played through again probably about 10 times. And so I think some of it has to do with my familiarity with these games and kind of the timing of when I played them in my life as well. So I'll admit that. But I would still call them complete masterpieces in their own right when it comes to the type of game they are. And Chrono Trigger just does everything I described in Final Fantasy VI and in Suikoden 2. It does both of those things just as well as both of those games, which is why for me it deserves a top spot. I think it is absolutely beautiful. I think it has some of the best music, and it has the old classic voiceless hero, because Chrono never really talks. He just kind of, his head will nod as he's explaining stuff, and then they'll respond to it. So you really feel like you are Chrono in that. And there's that kind of old school. When you played games back in the day, you filled in a lot of the blanks with your imagination. Now, as you play games, everything is so detailed. There's no imagination blank spots to fill in. It's all right there in front of you. So with Chrono Trigger, there's certainly...
That's because gamers would complain about it.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, I have to fill that in. They didn't. That's lazy writing.
Right, but back then it wasn't lazy writing. It was just the way they did it. But yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Frog is still one of my favorite characters of all time, with his sword, the Masamune. It's pretty awesome. And I don't know if I want to say too much more about it. We've talked about it a lot. I'll just say, firing up Chrono Trigger at the very beginning, when you hear the seagulls flying overhead, and then the little text box comes up as your mom's waking you up to send you over to the county fair. It's one of those moments that I just go, here we go. I'm about to experience one of the best games ever yet again. Yeah. Love Chrono Trigger. So much fun. And if you're going to play it, and if you happen to own a DS, that's the version I recommend. You can get it for pretty cheap, number one. But number two, it has a really cool control scheme with the bottom touchscreen. You can really quickly do all your attacks and stuff down there. So I recommend that version.
All right.
So that's it. That's our top 25. I'm pretty sure if we revisited this like in a month, our list wouldn't totally look the same. And I probably would have to add in The Last of Us somewhere in there and kick something else out. Yeah. But anyway, that's the way it goes. That's the way we landed for right now. All right, Derek, why don't you send us out with some words of wisdom for this week?
I have nothing to say. I have no words of wisdom.
Come on.
I'm still angry. Actually, I'm actually pretty happy, so I don't.
Is it okay? How about this? Instead of words of wisdom, how about you sign off with a special message to Sasan?
How you doing, Sasan? How you doing? Huh? Hey, you like that, huh? Yeah.
Why do you sound like an older guy hitting on some like high school chick right now?
Sasan is a high school chick. And MAGA John. John.
That's all I needed.
Make
all right.
America great again.
That does it for this week. We'll check in with you guys next time. If it's not next week, then look for us again in 2 weeks. Thank you guys for listening. See ya.
Who is your daddy? I am the father.
You fathers will understand.
My father taught me many things.
I got an idea. How about you all sit there quietly while I make dad noises?